Happy Hoops Day. The WNBA back for game twos, and that's why we are live right now on Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Albert Nguyen. You might know him as Analytics Capper on social media. So, some interesting results on Sunday, but we're going to break down today's games as well, maybe some futures. Albert, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well, man. Two really good semifinal matchups. One, big favorite that is down 0-1. So I'm excited to talk about that series. But things are going well, man. Doug, I'm actually going to be in Vegas again in a few weeks. So we will definitely link up when I'm in town.
That is always good news. I like just being here. I used to call Vegas the Facebook of cities because you just always can connect with people. Now, you and I obviously communicate more regularly, but it used to be like random high school and college friends who were in town for a conference, things like that. It would always be sort of the reconnecting and things like that. Big news out of the W not too long ago about it within the last hour. Sandy Brondello, the head coach of the Liberty, will not get her contract renewed. So a version of being fired, I suppose. The players were asked about it on the dais last Friday after New York was eliminated in game three in Phoenix. And Stewie and others were just appalled at the question or the thought of it, at least. But sort of big news, all things considered. I understand the decision. She's got some Tom Thibodeau in her coaching sort of game. Refuses to adjust and sort of has a stubbornness to her. But she did win a title a year ago, so the reigning champs let go of their coach. But they've been loaded with talent. I think they've underdelivered, all things considered. I don't think last year's team would have won in this year's field. I think a lot of things broke their way, including the whistle in game five of the finals. So I understand the move. I do think the league is evolving and getting much more analytically driven. We saw that with the hires last year. I mean, you take a coach like Nakase, who won Coach of the Year, she would win the title with this roster. So it's interesting, but it's a shock in terms of like on paper, but I understand it.
Yeah, it's not a big shock to me. I think the biggest shock was how Brianna Stewart, right, reacted at the end of their most recent press conference, where she was completely like shocked. She was appalled that that question was even brought up. But there was a lot of truth to it. The fact that they limped into the playoffs this year. They have a ton of talent, like Doug mentioned. Even though there are limitations to how they built their roster, but what they need is an infusion of brand new ideas, innovative ideas, especially offensively. That's going to get this team creative and getting them, executing not only in the half court, but I think also in the fast break, right? And that's what they're lacking right now.
Yeah, so obviously that doesn't impact the betting for this year's playoffs, but I did want to mention that real quickly. I also want to mention if you like what you hear on our show, sign up for the newsletter, get exclusive tips and the free Insider magazine. Sign up for free at bettingweeklystudios.com. So let's break down these games. We'll start in chronological order. Game two in Minnesota, the Lynx came back and rallied and won convincingly by double digits down the stretch of the fourth quarter. They're now favored by 7 at home in game two. It was 7.5 the last couple of days. Over unders 159. Now, this is a best of 5 series. Should remind everyone first round's best of 3. So we're in a best of 5. And I guess I just want to break down the thought process here, Albert, just for our novice bettors and our audience and things like that. Do you think Minnesota's dominant second half in game one is more about their talent gap and advantage with Phoenix or the Mercury's fatigue, given the quick turnaround from Friday evening, travel, less than 48 hours on the road, having to play a game one?
It's hard to say when you say which one is more impactful, but you have to mention the fatigue factor, because this team is laden with a ton of talent, right? They are pretty deep when it comes to outside of their starting five. But when you look at their starting five, they don't really, they're not inferior to anybody, right? Especially with Alyssa Thomas leading the charge there. So I guess I am saying it's a little more fatigue related, Doug. But that was a really tough series that they got out of. Phoenix was, I believe, your pick, mid-season, and they look great in terms of their form. They have a superstar and the perfect role players around this Shaquille O'Neal like gravity. And Minnesota, we've liked this team all season long. They are a great team with a really solid, solid, superstar Nafisa, a lot of good players, good coaches, and an unbelievable system. The system is meant to, it's a four-quarter game. So the fact that Minnesota, quote unquote, didn't play well in that first half, I don't think they were worried, to be honest. I think the system is meant for, one or two crooked quarters every single game, and that's basically what happened. You can make an argument that Phoenix outplayed them for two and a half, maybe even three quarters there. Leading the game heading into the fourth. Fourth quarter was completely different. 23-10. They only allowed Phoenix to score 22 points in that entire second half. So maybe some tired legs, but also I think some really good coaching and adjustments at halftime as well.
You phrased that perfectly. You cannot not mention the quick turnaround and everything like that. And Adam Osimo letting us know some interesting angles. It's Fees B Day today, so maybe we'll get into the props involving her. But you're right. You have to at least incorporate the fatigue. And Adam Osimo is going to bet the Phoenix or Lynx -7 because he has a Mercury ticket to win the championship because of Doug. So I'm going to hedge. Sidebar, that's not really a hedge. You got to be careful there because the Lynx can win and not cover the 7. So you need to be a little careful on these hedges. You don't want to get too cute trying to hedge early in the playoffs too. So I would maybe hedge with a series price, something that's definitely contrasting and a hedge because you can definitely just lose both. So be careful there. But in terms of this matchup, I think it's all about the turnaround and fatigue for Phoenix. They had no lift on their jump shots. They had 22 points in the entire second half. They were mentally fatigued. That's an emotional win to take down the defending champs. That game came down to the wire. Yes, they led for most of the second half, but Stewie kept getting every call and making good shots. So they were never really able to get true separation. And the Mercury Stars logged a lot of minutes. So I'm not saying it was a throwaway game. I definitely think the end of the fourth quarter was. I just think we're going to see a better representation of this matchup in game two. Speaking of which, in the NBA, teams that lose game one that are still on the road kind of bounce back. Now those are best of 7 series. There's a little bit of a relaxation with the team that won game one. Minnesota's in comfort zone a little bit. There's not a huge sense of urgency. We also see teams go up 2-0 by winning and covering both games at home. But I think the spot favors the Mercury. Would you kind of apply like the NBA sort of thought process here with a best of 5 in this situation?
I would not, to be honest, Doug, just because I'm that high on this Minnesota team. And I said this before the postseason even started, and I'm not going to change now. But I'm going to be on Minnesota every single game until I see otherwise. So I'm going to continue to bet Minnesota here spread. I know the line moved, right? Like you mentioned, it was 7.5 in the first game. Now it's 7. Bookmakers expect a little bit more of a competitive game throughout, not just a black and white first half and second half. But I would say this: there's argument here that Minnesota didn't play well either. They had
Yeah.
three players that basically scored 20, right? Nafisa had 18, McBride 21, and Williams 23. Courtney Williams is a little inconsistent. You don't expect 23 points every single time, but she is going to bring the energy. So if Phoenix is still feeling a little fatigue, or if they're, quote unquote, refreshed now that they have a full day's rest, Courtney Williams is not going to slow down. She's going to still bring the pressure. But I would argue that Nafisa, with only 18, it's still a solid game, 18 and 9. She was 8 for 16 from the field. I still think there's another gear that she can get to. Obviously, it's hard because Phoenix has a lot of the horses as well to run with Nafisa, but 3-point advantage is going to be Minnesota, and then I also expect Nafisa to play better. So those two combinations make me lean Minnesota. Not lean. I am going to be on Minnesota -7, but I fully get the side of Phoenix, and I think that's what makes a good better into a great better, or a novice better into a professional better, is you see both sides, right? You can make an argument for both sides, just like a debate. You can do it analytically driven. You can do it from your own, from your own eyes watching the game. But I think being able to see both sides and argue both sides and then make a clear decision makes you a really good better. And for me, I completely see Phoenix's side. I see their bounce back potential, and I see them from a talent standpoint, not that far off from Minnesota at all, right? They have really good players. And Satu, who was awesome to clinch that game is in New York, wasn't great in game one. So she's going to bounce back as well. So there's a lot of factors here. I just believe in Minnesota's system, and I believe that they can cover 7 points against anybody in this league.
I'm on the other side, which is good. It's good to disagree once in a while. I like the +7. I liked 7.5 more yesterday. I just think the Mercury could win this game outright. I think it's a good spot. Again, the Lynx have been so impressive this year. I understand your rationale to fade them or sorry, back them until it burns you, but I just think the spot is very favorable. There's times where this Lynx team has sort of been too complacent. I think that's the word. And when you don't have the bounce and the urgency, some of their role players don't sort of fire properly. And yes, you're going to get the production from Fee. That goes without saying. You're going to get Courtney Williams's effort and energy, but some of the other players, not McBucket, she's going to be there, but the other ones, the Atlanta Smiths, the some of the others, like I just wonder if this spot they're catching them a little fat and happy, and I think we're going to see a performance from the Mercury like we saw in Game 2 at the Liberty, where they blew that game with the Alyssa Thomas missed floater, and they're going to bounce back, I think, in a really good way. I'm going to have two plays on this game, split it up. I'm going to have one of them on the +2 first quarter because I think we start strong, and +7 for the Lynx. Sorry, the Mercury. I'm going to split up my normal half unit into two. I just think it's the right way to approach that. Now the seven's more enticing because you get the fouling and sort of the end of the game, whereas the +2 you don't get the fouling and stuff. But I do think there's a mindset approach that's more favorable for the Mercury. Again, team off a loss, things like that. But to your point, Albert, Lynx didn't play that great either. Now, I guess Phoenix should deserve some credit for that. But this Mercury team's interesting. They had so many injuries all year. Kalea Copper only played, I believe, 28 games. They start a rookie. That took some time. They start Mac, but she only plays like 15, 17 minutes. So there's just a lot of moving parts for Tibbetts. And I think it just took them a while to kind of reach their groove. So I'm going to take the +7 here. I wouldn't be stunned if they won the game outright. I really want. We've seen this in the playoffs over the years. It's a good bounce back spot for the Mercury. I'll grab the 7, but I also like the first quarter +2.
Yeah, I have a comment here, and then I'm gonna end it with a question because I'm interested to see your views. But so my biggest, I guess, argument for Phoenix Mercury is 3-point shooting. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. Don't get me wrong. Like they're not gonna drop 15 threes on you, right, and win the game by 40 because of their shooting. But they only hit 3 in game one, and that is a direct correlation to fatigue, whether it's physical or mental. The 3 previous games, I think they had 9, 7, and 6. So they're not going to hit like double digits, but if they can hit 6 or 7 or 8 threes in game 2, they are definitely live to win outright. My question to you, Doug, is you know how when I back the underdog, I also like to sprinkle the money line. Are you doing the same thing here? Are you feeling that Phoenix has a chance to win?
I do think they're live, but I don't think the line value. I think it's more pronounced that this game's tight than it is that they could win the game. I also don't trust Alyssa Thomas at the free throw line with the ball in her hand, Bonner with the ball in her hand with the free throw line. I think they're going to play through the final whistle. So what happens is, and I've tried to articulate this many, many times over the years, the +250 isn't enough for me. I'd rather just have the 7 and the -110. So I've tried to articulate this. It's really like the team that won game 1 almost starts game 2 like they're protecting a lead,
Hmm.
as if they're entering the fourth quarter of a game up 10. That's kind of like what happens. It takes incredible professional maturity to start game 2 when you've won game 1 with a killer instinct, right? We talk about it in football betting and other betting too, just the flat spots, the off big wins. There's things you want to fade. Um, so this is an opportunity to back a team that is going to feel more desperate and fade a team that's going to be a little bit more comfortable. Now, to your point, the Lynx are on a mission all season since losing game 5 last year on the road in the finals,
Yep.
and they're not silly enough but they did start flat against the Valkyries in game 2 last round. Now, that was on the road, and the Valkyries couldn't miss a three. They shot 50% for the entire game, but they were like 70% in the first half. So maybe that wasn't really a complacent team. I just think it's going to be tough for them to match the energy and the effort and the urgency of the Mercury to start. And the Lynx, I think, are comfortable playing from behind. So I think it's going to be a really tight game. I'd be surprised if they lost by double digits. I think seven's a really good number. But overall, I'm not a big believer in sprinkling money lines. I should be, especially in the W, which I think has the softest market and you have more variance in these types of situations. I know we've talked about in the past with like these horrible spots in the regular season where a team's just fat and happy or whatever. So sometimes there is benefit, but talking to odds makers, I mean, the number one thing that the takeaway is their sharpest accounts typically don't bet money line. They just bet the spread because that's where the biggest edge is. They've taken some money lines for sure on the favorites. So that's in the back of my head since I remember talking to odds makers about the concept of sprinkling money line. So that's probably I need to probably evolve my game a little bit, Howard, and probably diversify it a little bit and do a little sprinkling of the money line. I just hate blowing money on even if it's plus 250 when it's like, God, I could have just put that, I'd rather loop in +7 to a teaser leg or sorry, a parlay leg to later where I can amplify the profit of something later on.
Yeah, the other strategy around sprinkling money line, because you're talking to someone who bets underdogs all the time, right? In every single sport, and you've seen that, Doug. Outside of tennis, I'm predominantly favorites, but when it comes to football, basketball, and in the W, I'm a lot on the dog, and I've seen just through the last 6 years of my numbers when I also bet the money line. And you could do like 90% on the spread, which is high confidence, and just 10% on the money line. It is actually pretty profitable. So maybe it's something you can look into. The other strategy for Osimo, I was just thinking through this. I know he has you said he has Phoenix to win the title. Yeah. So
Yeah, he took the long odds when I was recommending it, 30 to 1, 25 to 1. I forget what it was on this show.
okay, yeah. So if you are if he's been telling Doug, which is great, right? Because Doug is one of the sharpest in terms of WNBA betting in the world. If you're on Phoenix and you also kind of like just like Doug, you like Phoenix tonight, and they have an outside shot of winning, I would wait until after game two because then you can live bet the series on the links because I think that's how you truly hedge and not just hedging the money line of this game.
Yeah, or late 7 because then you can, obviously reverse middle. It's tricky, though. Sometimes if you have a futures ticket at, like, 30 to 120, you don't wanna get in the hedging in the semi like, it's a long shot, and if it hits, great. Maybe at the very end of the finals, you can hedge here and there, but just let it play out. If you lose it, you lose it. You shouldn't have a big wager on a 25 to 1 anyway. So, I just think you can do more harm than good sometimes trying to hedge when you're hedging with a favorite, of -7 or -335 on the money line, things like that. The chat is alive and well. The comments are firing off. Someone says Thomas Maggio says, "Do you like the over in this game?" I don't know. I don't know. I do think the Mercury will score more and have more bounce in their step offensively. I think they'll tighten things defensively. I think the shooting will pick up. Obviously, as Albert touched on with the 3 3-pointers that only in game one. I also think defense ratchets up. So I kind of indecisive here. I would lean over here. I think Mercury want to push pace. I think Lynx do too. So over 159 would be the only side I would play this.
This is the first game ever, I think, where Doug and I are on opposite sides on both the spread and the total.
Nice.
I lean the under here, but I lean the under in most playoff situations, anyways, because I think the possessions are a lot more, I guess, more paramount. So things are a little slower. I know Doug says they want to push the pace, and I think if it becomes a up and down track meet in that second half, I think that favors Minnesota. So just because they have more shooters, right? So I don't know. In terms of the total pre-flop, I still lean the under, but that's just me. Like playoff games and island primetime games, I always lean under, anyways.
Okay, I like it. So that we're kind of split there across the board. I like how you mentioned that. Just checking in the other comments before we go to the um, Dirty Reg 22 says over under on how many times Sabali hits the deck. Is she a flopper like that? I didn't realize that. I know she's a step back 3-point shooter often. Any props catch your eye? Not Sabali hitting the deck, but any other props? Do you have an idea of who's going to go off? Because Copper went off in the last game and she obviously has a gigantic athleticism edge over basically everyone in the NBA. I do have a prop that I really like in the next game. By the way, if you like the Lynx to clamp down on defense and cover, -7 and under, two leg parlay plus 215. Anything stand out to you in terms of the props market, fee on her birthday, anything along those lines?
Yeah, so we know Nafisa Collar as a great two-way player. She accumulates stats in a myriad of ways, right? Points, rebounds, some assists, also steals and blocks. She's coming off a game with 0 steals and 0 blocks. The game before that, only 1 steal, 0 blocks. Same thing the game before that. So she's only had 2 stocks in 3 games for a player that's averaging basically 3.5 stocks, right? So I think if you can somehow find, the steals or blocks or steals and blocks, you can find that. I think there's good opportunity there because I think her activity level, not only because of it's her birthday, but she's just a very active defensive player. She's always around the rim when it comes to defensive rebounding. So I think she'll get a couple of steals or blocks. That's my only look tonight.
You think her dip in that production is more about just the nature and the how the flow of a playoff game is versus the regular season, and that more measured possessions, things like that. And I think she guards AT a lot, and AT's not shooting that much, and she's passing, and therefore it's harder for Fee to rip her in terms of stealing the ball.
Yeah, AT's not shooting much, which means it's really hard to steal the ball from her. Plus, she handles the ball really well, and she uses her body, right? So I say to answer your question is the combination of, yeah, possessions are a lot more measured and their strategy around it, but also she's coming off an injury, so she's probably not as quote unquote reckless, right? Jumping into the passing lanes or going for pump fakes, things like that. She's just staying down and keep her hands up to contest. So those are a couple of things, but I think birthday fee is going to be a little different. I think the activity level is going to ratchet up.
Okay. All right, good stuff. And hey, just a reminder, we have a bunch of great content here on the Bet Rivers Network and the Betting Weekly umbrella. Released this morning, Betting Weekly WTA with Nigel and Rory as they preview the WTA Beijing tournament. So a lot of good wagers possibly for the women's tennis. So please go check that out as we turn the page for our show to game 2 here in Las Vegas, where I am located, as the Aces stunned in game 1 on their home court. They're now 9-point favorites for game 2. 164 is your total. That trickled down a couple points. And this Fever team, keeps losing players throughout the regular season, but they are relentless. They began the postseason as a 250 to 1 long shot to win it all, began this round between 80 and 100 to 1 odds. They're now 35 to 1. Is that worth a play? Should we start believing on Indiana?
35 to
Or
1 is
25 to 1, excuse me.
okay.
25 to 1 now.
Yeah, 25 to 1 is a little different. 35 to 1 when there's only 4 teams left and you're up 1-0, there's a lot of value in that. But 25 to 1, I think it's a 50-50 coin flip in terms of deciding whether to do it or not. I mean, Kelsey Mitchell, if she continues to play like this, Doug, she's going to be finals MVP. Like, she's that good of a player. She's
Right.
making all of her shots, not only shooting well from the free throw line. I think she was 6 for 6 or 7 for 7 in that first game, but she's hitting her threes. When she hits her threes, it opens up the rest of her game. She's so good, just manipulating the defense with her awesome dribbling skills and being able to hit that shot. So she definitely outplayed the MVP in Asia Wilson. I would fully expect Asia to bounce back tonight, right? Asia had a really bad game, 6 for 22, probably her worst game in like 2 months, and so I expect him to bounce back, but that doesn't mean I like the spread here. I actually still like Indiana Fever spread, especially if this line continues to move to Vegas, because I think the steam, people are going to continue to chase the steam. It's going to continue to go up. And if you can wait, and if it goes to 9.5, I think there's a lot of value with the Fever.
I do too. I think the tax is way too high. Look, these teams, excuse me, when you have down a bunch, their injuries have certainly um, hurt their like ceiling, but it's also strengthened their chemistry in the locker room. That's it's them against the world. They're really a tight group now, and they know how to play with each other. Now, Caitlin Clark, I still think is the best guard in the league, but she's ball dominant, and they ask Kelsey Mitchell to do different things, play off the ball, things like that. When you run the ball offense through Kelsey Mitchell, who is arguably the fastest player in the league with the ball, and she has a great range as a shooter. The Aces don't really have anyone that can guard her, right? She's more guardable by other teams like Natasha Cloud can guard her, Gabby Williams can guard her, Kalea Copper can guard her. The Aces don't have anyone. So she's going to continue to go off against this Aces team. Also, from a matchup standpoint, Leah Boston can at least pose problems to Asia Wilson. She's not going to shut her down. And by the way, Kelsey Mitchell, 30-1 to win the finals MVP, a little bit better payoff than 25-1.
I
So
like
if you
that.
like that.
Yep.
Now there's of course Aaliyah Boston could go off in the finals. There's always that component. But so I just think it's a tough matchup for the Aces. And make no mistake, the Aces have lost all 3 meetings against the Fever when Caitlin Clark has not played.
Mm.
So now, as Becky Hammond alluded to in her press conference before the series, saying they didn't face us when we had hit our groove. That was early in the season before they had tweaked their lineup and went on that 17-game win streak. But it's a big number. I actually am playing the Fever in the first quarter.
Mm.
So typically, when there's an upset in the previous game, usually the team that pulled off the upset actually picks up from where they left off. I think it's for a variety of reasons. That A, they're super confident, and this is when they're an underdog. Super confident. B, they're playing loose, like house money. And I don't think the Aces shoot out of the gate with, oh, they're all going to play tough. They're going to kill them from the start. It's not one of those situations. Usually that's going to kick into gear mid-second quarter or mid-third quarter on. So I think the Aces are actually could be like trailing after one. So I'm going to play the Fever +3 -117 in the first quarter. I just think to your point about the 9 being too high, I agree it's too high. And thus the first half and first quarter line are commensurate with that. So you're going to get line value everywhere. And so thus I think there's line value in the first quarter as well as the effort. I think the Aces are not panicking. And that's why they're going to be like cool, calm, and collected a little bit to start, whereas the Fever might empty the chamber early just because they're going to be so confident in everything and have a little swagger. Aces are still going to approach this game like the favorite, like cool, calm, and collected, like I mentioned. So I actually think the urgency will kick in for the Aces. I think the number's too big. So I like the Fever. They're tough, man. Look, Kelsey Mitchell's going to be all WNBA first team. Okay. Aaliyah Boston's a former number 1 overall pick. She was an all-star this year. Natasha Howard's quality, and Odyssey Sims has been fine, even though they picked her up on the waiver wire and had her starting point guard now. And Lexi Hull's been good. I just worry when the Fever got what they came for, right? They wanted to win outright. They're sort of going to restaurants and based on social media, kind of not cruise control, but they're not as hungry us against the world, I think, mindset. But I think first quarter that won't be an issue.
That first quarter look actually reminds me of the NBA finals just a few months ago, right? It was Indiana against Oklahoma City, game 7 in Oklahoma City. Everybody expecting this coronation event to happen. And if you guys forget, before Tyrese Halliburton went down, that first quarter, that first quarter and a half, like it was owned by Indiana. Like they were playing loose, they were playing with free money, they were happy to be there. And that happens sometimes all the way up to a title run. So I agree with Doug there. I do like, because everybody's going to be expecting this Vegas bounce back. But at the same time, here are my arguments for Vegas, right? So Las Vegas, they won what, like 17 or 18 games in a row. So you
17.
knew that streak had to end sometime. You want that streak to end in the first game, right? You don't want that to obviously end in game 5 in a decider or when they're down 0-1. So that was the perfect time, right, for a team to lose their streak. Secondly, they are at home, and we know that the Vegas Aces fourth quarter at home is a little weird. So I wouldn't touch, the full game. I like how Doug is isolating the first quarter there. And then the second thing is, or third thing, Indiana beat the Aces in all 4 quarters in game one. That is a rare, very, very rare thing to happen in basketball, not just WNBA, but NBA as well. You usually see one team win a quarter, even tie a quarter. Indiana straight up won every single quarter. So if they were to win that first quarter tonight, that's 5 straight quarters against the Aces, which is very impressive and I think unexpected, and I think that's why it's a very contrarian slash sharp look. So I like that. I'm just going to be on the Fever for the full game personally.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only side I would play the full game line. So we're back in agreement. So I guess you're saying it doesn't fit the typical smash spot that the Aces are in the NBA playoffs. Usually, teams that lose game one are an absolute hammer in game two. I think the Timberwolves happened this year.
Especially
I
the
forget which team they faced, but they lost game one at home and then absolutely nuked their opponent in game two. So you like the dog here. Now, look, it's a shorter game, lower totals, not a lot of possessions, which I one of the reasons I love the +3 in quarter one. But there's a lot to like. But usually it's a smash spot. But you're saying, hey, no, this is a big number. There's a tax on this Aces team that seems a little much.
And it might be a little like personal bias, right, against the Aces. Like I know they won 17 straight game. I know they ended the season on fire and got to the number 2 seed, but there's still something about this team that I'm not totally bought in yet, right? I'm ultra confident in Minnesota. Like when I saw them like week 2 of the regular season, I was like, this is a team to beat. They have the players, but they have the system. Vegas had to pivot right midway through the season, and teams do this all the time. They have to change their strategy, and it worked, and it took off, right? And props to them, and props to the coaching staff and the players to buy into that system. But for some reason, it just hasn't hit me where I'm like, okay, the Vegas are true contenders. It's just not there yet, and I think the Fever, the fact that they have so many players out, not only are they closer and they have that me against the world mentality, but it allowed all these players to step up in their roles throughout the year. So now when it's winning time, they've been doing this all year long. I don't think they're surprised by it, right? They've been running these sets. The seventh best player has been playing as the fourth best player running these sets, and they're used to it, right? And so I like Indiana. I think the Aces have to shoot really well from three to continue their amazing run, and I'm on the side of shooting variance regression, if you will. I think the fact that they've been so hot for 3-4 weeks, there's going to be some 3-point shooting regression, and I think it's happening right now. I wouldn't be surprised, Doug, if they lose outright tonight. I know that it's a big spread. I know it's a big spread, and I know everybody expects a long series here or Aces to come back. But my money right now, it could change after this game. But right now, heading into game two, my money is on the Fever series bet.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Maurice Walker in the chats is opposite of me, likes Aces first quarter -2.5. Okay, I like it. I like getting involved. I like sticking to your guns. One of us will be right, and that's -125 at Bet Rivers to -2.5. So look, I understand the narrative, like, oh, a team's going to jump out, blah blah blah. That usually takes some time to turn things around. Any props stand out to you, Albert? I like Jewel Lloyd 2+ made threes. It's -104. She did not hit this number in the last game. She did not hit it in game 3 against Seattle. But before that, she's a big part of their offense. Now, some of that was against weaker competition, not as good defensively, but I think she's a must to get going. I think Chelsea Gray knows that, distributing the ball. I think Jewel Lloyd, I do think if there's a relaxed element of Indiana, it just won't be the urgency on defense like they were maybe in game one, like us against the world. So I do think Lloyd will have some looks, and I think she's an excellent shooter. So I'll go as my only prop for this game: 2+ made threes, Jewel Lloyd -104. Any interest on your end from a prop perspective in this game?
Yeah, I'm looking at Natasha Howard. I think she's a great like glue type player, that really helps not only offense but defense. So I'm actually looking at her. She was able to grab 11 rebounds in basically 22 minutes. So that, rebound per minute rate is incredible, and I think that's going to continue in this game because I think you have the matchups already formed, right? You're going to see Boston and Asia Wilson. So I think on the off ball, the side, the person that's going to grab all the on the rebounds on the weak side is going to be Natasha Howard. So I like her rebounds prop. I'm looking at it on Bet Rivers right now. Yeah, over 6.5 is -141. It's very juicy, but she is coming off a game with 11 rebounds. I think it's juicy for a reason. I still like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if there's the regression that you think will exist with the shooting for the aces, there'll be defensive rebounds available. She is the key because I think Kelsey Mitchell's fantastic. Aaliyah Boston, you know what you're going to get as well. I think Howard is the key for when she's engaged and she has urgency and things like that. They're really tough to beat. So this Fever team is certainly live here. I do not think they're going to win today. I wouldn't be stunned because I think it could be just one of those bad matchups. And if Asia had the presentation of the MVP award, so she was maybe a little drained. I think she'll be focused in this game for her defensive player of the game. I think she got that in game 3, and she had her parents accept the award because she didn't want to be bothered with an elimination game against Seattle. So maybe she was onto something because maybe she was drained for game 1. I think she bounces back, but the question is, does the rest of the team? We shall see. All right, my man. Another fun show. We appreciate everyone getting involved in the chat. It's always awesome. Oh, JG6. Good question. He wants us to talk about the over under. Fair. Do we have, I don't have an opinion. 164. I think the under, I guess I do have an opinion. The under is the only way I would play it. That would be a lean for me. I still think the aces could be a little tight here. Fever's calling card is defense. They're going to be loose, but I think their calling card's defense. I think the aces, I think Becky Hammond laid into them. But it's still low. I mean, the playoff adjusted totals are certainly evident. So it's under a pass, but it's too low for me to get involved.
I also lean the under here. There's a few reasons. One, postseason games, right? Big games. So I lean the under by default. Also, it's the last game of the night in prime time. So you're gonna see a lot of bettors, hoping for points or hoping for big numbers there. So I lean the under. And secondly or thirdly, I think it's a little correlated with my Fever +9. I think if Indiana is gonna cover this 9, they want to slow things down. They want to make it really physical, get into the Vegas, the aces heads, right? Make them shoot free throws, make them get, take the ball out of bounds. I think it's correlated with the Fever +9. So if you wanted some action on the under, I would parlay the under and Fever +9. I think that's a nice correlation bet. But for me right now, only thing official is Fever +9 because again, I think they're live to win, Doug. Don't
Wow.
we'll text later tonight, but don't be surprised if I'm like, man, I told
So
you.
just you're cautioning everyone to loop them in some money line parlays with maybe the Yankees or some or the Mariners who are playing the Rockies tonight. So just be careful. And
Oh
the
yeah,
dual leg combo, the correlated parlay is plus 240.
yeah.
So just to recap, you obviously have the Natasha Howard prop, the Fever +9. In the earlier game, you are Lynx -7 and the over. What do you have?
No read on the total, but I lean the under in that one.
Okay, and you like the -7. I'm on the +7. So we'll have a wash for the show. Bottom line. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. We appreciate everyone joining us on this Tuesday and our next show because it's just one of those things where we're dark now a few days because the playoffs won't be till Friday. Sarah's going to be holding down the fort for me on that one, and I forget who she's with on that. I think Wes, but I'm not 100% sure. So Friday, that's obviously prior to Game 3, so there'll be a travel day, everything like that. So that's our next show. So for Albert Nguyen and everyone else behind the scenes, including producers Z and Max, and everyone that makes it look so good here, does all the heavy lifting. I'm Doug Kezirian. Best of luck with your wagers, and we'll see you back here on Betting Weekly Fast Break on Friday.